Hi everybody, it's Miss Right. So today I am going to walk you through how to make a Christmas cake. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through the steps for the recipe that we posted for the Christmas cake. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do your fruit, how to prepare your fruit. The reason I picked this recipe was because you don't need to soak your fruit overnight. You just boil the fruit along with the butter and the sugar and the juice from the fruit. So I'm going to chat you through that kind of step first. The next step I'm going to show you to do is how to line your tin. So I'm going to show you all the things that you need to line a tin. I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's finished as well. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through all the dry ingredients. So I'm going to show you all the kind of ingredients that I pre-weighed out and show you how to mix them together with the boiled fruit. And I'm going to show you how to put it into the tin. So first thing that you need to do is you need to, in a pan, add 250 grams of butter to a pan. Now I have put the butter in first, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my fruit on top of that. So the recipe tells you to put 1 kilogram of mixed dried fruit in with the butter, the sugar and the liquids that I'm going to show you in a second. Now I'm using Morrison's luxury dried fruit. It's a really good mixture of fruit because it's got the dried pineapple, it's got raisins, it's got cherries, it's basically got everything in there that they suggest that you can have in the recipe. So 2 bags of this from Morrison's makes up 1 kilogram, and that's perfect for the recipe. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to turn my butter on a really low heat. The recipe suggests that you put this on a medium heat, but I'm just going to get my butter going and just kind of soften it up on a really low heat. Be really careful with your butter in case you burn it. Just keep it on a low heat to start to kind of melting. Now, whilst that's on, what I'm then going to do is I'm going to show you how to zest your fruit and also how to juice it. If you have a fruit juicer in the house, that would be perfect. I'm just going to show you how to do it by hand. You don't really need a juicer to get the juice out of the orange and the lemon, but I'm going to show you how to do that by hand. So I've already pre-zested this orange. Now what you want to do is take off the kind of outer layer of the orange. As soon as you start to see the white part, you want to stop. The white part is really bitter, so you don't want that in your mixture. If you just take the lemon and the orange, make sure you're giving them a wash beforehand, and then all you're going to do, just with a normal grater, is you're just going to take the top layer of that off. Okay, so just keep it moving around, just quite light pressure on the grater. And again, as I said, when you start to see the white move on, if you've got a small grate that's specifically designed for zest, then you can use that. I'm just using a large grater because that's all I have in the house. Okay. So, all my zest, all my lemon and my orange, I'm going to add that into my pan with my butter just now. Now, my butter has started to melt, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip in there my sugar as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that kind of settle in with the butter. And give that a stir. And I'm just going to melt that butter into my sugar, just to start with. Now the sugar will burn if it's up too high, so just be very careful. And again, just keep that on a low heat to begin with. Now, for the juice from the orange and the lemon, what I'm going to do is I am just going to half my orange and my lemon, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze that into a bowl. Now what you want to do is just get your fingers inside the bit of fruit, and any of the kind of stones will fall into your hand. What you want to do is just keep them to the side. You want to get all that juice out of the lemon, and then obviously do that other half as well. Just get your fingers right in about it and just squeeze it really hard. It's quite a good one to do with the wee ones as well, so they're helping you. They could be doing this whilst you're keeping an eye on the pan. And again, just want to do the same with the orange. And any stones that fall out will fall out into your hands. You don't want any of these stones in with your mixture. So just make sure you get all that juice out. Now obviously just with clean hands, what you want to do is scoop any of the stones out. If you had a lot of stones in here, you could run it through a sieve and that would take all the stones and all the bits out as well. Just make sure that you don't have any stones in there. Okay, now what I'm going to do with my juice, I'm going to pour that in with my sugar and my butter. Now my butter has fully almost melted into my mixture, so I'm going to tip in my fruit. So both bags, this is 1 kilogram, each bag is about 500 grams. And tip the whole bag of sugar in, whole bag of fruit, sorry, into there. And just put that in as well. Now the recipe says that you need to boil this for 5 minutes. So once you've got all that liquid fully mixed in with your fruit, you're then going to boil this down for 5 minutes. And then we're going to put that to the side to cool, and I'm going to chat you through how to line your tin and all your dry ingredients as well. So just keep that moving around, sure all that butter and sugar and juice is all kind of fully mixed in with the fruit. Now the last thing to go into the pan is, now the recipe says the alcohol that you can add in is, so you can use brandy, you can use sherry. Now obviously if you are intending on giving this to the wee ones and you don't want to add alcohol in, or anyone that you're giving the cake to doesn't like alcohol, you can actually substitute this for orange juice or apple juice. So I've chosen to use sherry. It's not got a particularly high alcohol percentage and it's very sweet, so I'm going to add that into my mixture. But as I say, you can substitute this for orange or apple juice. It doesn't need to include alcohol. I'm just adding it in because I am intending on giving this to adults. So I'm going to turn that up slightly to a medium heat. Again, I'm going to give that a really good mix. I said I really like this recipe because previous kind of Christmas recipes I've used, they have, you need to soak the fruit, so because you don't need to do that in this recipe, it's just a bit quicker to prepare. Okay, so next things up, I'm going to show you how to line your tin. Now for this, the recipe states that you need a 20 centimetre tin. Mine is 8 inches across, so 20 centimetres is an 8-inch tin. I'm also using one that has a bottom that can get popped out. I just find this much easier to use, especially when it's quite a deep cake tin. The bottom, the removable bottom is much easier. So for this, we need to line the tin before we actually use it. Now I just want to show you the finished one that I did yesterday. So this is my finished cake from yesterday, and this is what we're hoping to achieve as a kind of final product. So obviously don't forget about your fruit as well, so just keep that moving around. Now you might want to move this to the back of the cooker, especially if there's wee ones floating around. You might want to move that to the back of the cooker, just for safety. Now, for this you will need your tin. Now also you need your newspaper. So what I've done is I've taken 2 sheets of newspaper and I've just wrapped them together just to give me this big long strip. I've also got, this is a double layer of greaseproof paper, so I've cut 2 circles, and these 2 circles fit perfectly within the bottom. All I did for that was I just popped the base off and I drew round the base, giving my circle shape. And then all I did was I trimmed my circles down to make sure that they're the same shape as the tin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pastry brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil up the bottom of my tin. Now I've just put a wee bit of oil on this brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go round the bottom and I'm going to go round the sides. Now make sure that you get in every kind of corner. And up round the sides as well. And then what you want to do is take one bit of paper to begin with and place that inside and just grease it to keep it flat, and then take the other piece and pop that on top and just grease that as well. Then what I've done is I've cut 2 strips of greaseproof paper. So what you want is, they'll be obviously not the correct length, but what you want to do is make sure that they are the right depth. You want them slightly deeper than the depth of the cake tin. So I'm going to take 1 strip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that inside my tin. And I'm just going to give my fruit wee stir in between. Now as I said, this only needs to be boiled for 5 minutes. So I'm going to give this 1 more minute and then I'm going to turn it off. Okay. So my strip, I've laid that inside my tin, and then I'm going to take my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grease over the top of the strip as well. Now you might find that you need a bit more oil for this. Try not to make your brush too covered in oil, because you don't want too much oil inside the pan, inside the tin, because what will happen, or what you'll find will happen, is the cake will burn really quickly on the outside, so the oil will speed that up, and you'll end up with a kind of like burnt, really dark edge to your cake. So you don't want too much oil. So just make sure your sides are oiled up. And just make sure that lies flat inside your tin. That's 1 strip, and then what I'm going to do is take the other strip, and I'm going to lay that around the other edge, place that inside my tin, and just lie it flat against the sides. And again, take a pastry brush and a wee bit of oil. Again, if you need to oil up your brush, that's fine, but just not too much oil. To get it to lay flat. Now, my fruit is done now. That's been on for about 5 minutes. I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm just going to put it on a ring to the sides and let it cool down. Now, it says about half an hour on the recipe to let your fruit cool down. So when I did this previously, I left it for about 20 minutes, and I found that was enough time for it to kind of cool down enough for me to be able to use it. So just make sure that is fully greased all the way down. And make sure it's lying flat against the tin. Now, the next thing you will need is a piece of string. Now, I am just using kind of like craft string for this. I'm not using or I suppose you could use kind of like shoelaces, or just kind of anything you've got to tie it with, and make sure it's tight. Now, what you want to do is take your strip of newspaper, and what you want to do is place it around the outside of the tin. Now, the reason that we use newspaper is the tin is actually going to be in the oven for 2 hours, so you don't want to, you want to kind of protect the cake as much as you can, and the newspaper just stops the outside from burning and from cooking too quickly, so the inside can cook as well. So you want to cross over your strip, then take your string. Now, you might need a wee hand at this point, you might need someone to kind of hold it at the front for you, but I just bring it around from the back, bring it around to the front, And then what you want to do is tie a bow in the front, pull that really tight, and then just tie a knot in your newspaper. Make sure it is really secure. So just like that, and just make sure it is secure, and just pop that to one side while you're waiting on your fruit cooling down. Now I'm just going to give my hands a wee wash in between, and then I'm going to just chat you through the dry ingredients, and we're going to prep that just now while we're waiting on our fruit cooling down. Now you might want to also give your fruit a stir in between, just to let the heat out of it as you're preparing all your kind of dry ingredients as well. Okay, so for the next part you will need a large mixing bowl. There are quite a lot of dry ingredients involved in this recipe that I'm going to chat you through right now. So yes, you need a large mixing bowl, and I have pre-weighed out all of my dry ingredients. So for this recipe you need 175 grams of flour. So 175 grams of flour. You also need 100 grams of ground almonds. Now, if you have anybody who has an allergy to nuts and you don't want to use nuts in the recipe, you can substitute this for flour. I've also got a half teaspoon of baking powder, 2 tablespoons of mixed spice. Now, it needs to be mixed spice and not allspice. They're not the same spice mixture, so it's mixed spice, not allspice. So there's 2 tablespoons of that. I've also got 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now, if you're not particularly fond of cinnamon, then you can use a lot less than that, or you can just take that out of the recipe as well. That won't make a difference to the consistency of it. We've also got a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. Now, all these ingredients I got from Morrison's. I just bought Morrison's own brand of everything. It won't make a difference to the quality of the cake. And it's perfectly suitable for kind of any cake mixture that you're using. And the last thing that I am going to show you just now is 100 grams of flaked almonds. So that is all my dry ingredients that I need for my large mixing bowl. You also need 4 eggs for this as well. Now my eggs I've already pre-cracked into a bowl, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give that a whisk. And I'm going to put that to one side until I'm ready to use it. Okay, you'll also need another wet ingredient you'll need is 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and I'm going to put that to the side as well. Now, to the large mixing bowl, the first kind of thing I'm going to add in here is I'm going to tip in my flour, and then I'm going to put in my ground almonds, my 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of mixed spice, my cinnamon, my ground cloves, and my flaked almonds. Now, before I add any of those wet ingredients into the bowl, the recipe doesn't actually say this, but I would suggest that you give this a mix before you add the fruit mixture in there. So what you want to do is take a wooden spoon and just give that a good mix together. Okay, so just make sure they're all that's all fully mixed in, I would say, before you tip your fruit mixture in. Okay, and then I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And I'm going to mix that in as well. And then before I tip my fruit mixture in, I'm actually going to add my egg into the dry ingredients. Remember just to wash your hands in between if you get any egg on your hands. Okay. Now my oven, the recipe states that the oven needs to be on at 130 degrees. If you've got a fan oven, if not a fan, then it's 150, and if it's a gas, it's gas mark 2. Now I preheated my oven just when I started this at the beginning, so before you kind of start this recipe, it tells you right at the beginning to preheat your oven. I am using a fan oven, so my fan oven's on at 130 degrees. So I'm going to incorporate all of those eggs into my dry mixture before I tip in my fruit. And just make sure that you get all of the dry ingredients off the side of the bowl before you think about adding that fruit mixture in there. This will just make it much easier to mix together. Now you want to get all that mixture off the spoon. I'm switching to the spoon that I'm actually using for my fruit. Alright. So, the last thing that we have to do is now, I am actually going to add in some chopped walnuts to my recipe. This is not on the ingredients list, but everyone in my family really likes walnuts, so I'm going to add that into my recipe. Again, if anyone has got a nut allergy, then this is obviously not essential and not needed if you don't want to add that in. But as I say, I quite like to add some nuts into my recipe just for a bit kind of like crunchy texture, but it's not essential, it's not part of the ingredients, so you don't need to do that as well. So all I'm going to do is just break those walnuts up into my recipe. What I did beforehand was I took a rolling pin and I just bashed the bag. Again, I bought those walnuts from Morrison's. Everything was bought from Morrison's for this recipe. Okay, so I've got my walnuts in there. Now, my fruit is just about ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip the contents of the fruit into my bowl. This is why I said you really need a large mixing bowl, because at this point you really don't want to be switching bowls. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that mixture and I'm just going to... Now, I could have left my fruit to cool for a bit longer. If you've got the time, I would suggest that you probably want to cool your fruit down for a bit longer, because you don't want that to cook the egg in the mixture. So if you have a bit longer to wait, let your fruit cool fully down before you actually use it. Now, I like to do this a couple of weeks before Christmas. So this recipe says that you can actually store this 3 months before you actually need to use it. So you can make this mixture round about now. This can actually go into a tin. I'm actually going to show you how to do that as well. I made 2 cakes yesterday, so I'm going to show you what I've done with mine to prepare it, and then I'll give you some suggestions along with the link to this recipe on how you can decorate your cake. I like to do it differently every year, and I think it's a great thing to do, especially if you've got kids in the house and they want to, a bit of decorating, something that you can do in the house. If we're all going to be in the house a bit much over Christmas, then it's a kind of good thing to do just before Christmas, is to decorate your cake. You can put it out on Christmas Day, or not even Christmas Day, you can just enjoy it around the kind of festive period. So you want to fully kind of incorporate all that fruit into the dry ingredients. I would suggest you use a really big wooden spoon for this, just so you can get right to the bottom of the bowl. It's not covering your hands. Now what you want to do is bring your tin over, and what you then want to do, now you probably need someone to hold the bowl at this point because it's really heavy. So all I'm going to do is take my wooden spoon out, and I'm just going to tip some of that mixture into the tin. Let's see, if you've got a wee helper, they could hold the bowl and you could scrape the mixture out. I'm just going to try and be very careful and not get it all over my tin. Don't worry if you get it on the paper, it's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to scoop this out into my tin. Actually, what I'm going to use for this is a serving spoon. So I'm just going to use a big metal spoon, just make the process a bit quicker. So if you've got a big serving spoon, scoop it into the tin. So just lift it out and plug it in. Now this recipe says that you can mature your cake up to Christmas. So to do that, the recipe just says that all you do is put a few holes in the top of the cake every kind of like 2 weeks up to Christmas. So 2 or 3 times up to Christmas I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to mature it with some orange juice. Let's get all that mixture out the bowl. It's a very rich cake, it's going to feel very heavy. Just get all that mixture out of there. And then what we're going to do once we've done this, we're going to put this in the oven. So this is going to go in for 2 hours. I do suggest you put a timer on this as well. It's a good thing to do it in the morning and then just kind of forget about it. So just make sure that you flatten that surface out, make sure it's even. Another wee trick is if you just literally very gently lift the tin and just tap it, it'll just naturally even itself out. So the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the oven. Then I'm just going to show you my finished cake from yesterday, show you how it turned out. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven for, as I said, 2 hours. I'm going to pop it in here. Try and make sure that the paper is not touching any sides of the oven because it will burn very quickly, so just make sure that it is not touching any surfaces in the oven. And be very careful when you're putting it in the oven because it is very heavy. Okay, so once you've got it in there, put your timer on for 2 hours. Now, 2 other kind of wee tips for you. So this is my cake from yesterday. So as I said, what the recipe suggests, it said every kind of couple of weeks up to Christmas. So you can mature it every week. If you're doing it with alcohol, you can actually do this every week. So all you do is take a skewer, and then what you want to do is just poke some holes into your cake. And then all you do is take a teaspoon, and all you do is drizzle a teaspoon of, if you're using sherry or brandy or whatever. If you're not using sherry or brandy and you're doing it with orange juice, you maybe don't want to do it every single week, maybe every fortnight up to Christmas, and that will just keep the cake nice and kind of moist up towards Christmas time. Now, to take this out of the tin, what you want to do, or what I do, because you can pop the bottom, is you just want to undo the string. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop the bottom base out of this. Okay, so it should come away quite easily because we've lined the tin. So what you want to do is just pop it out. See, it is very heavy, so you might need a hand at this point. Right, you can actually tip it upside down. And pop it down like this. Now once that comes out of the oven, you will need a cooling wire. So you want to just put that to the side. Take all the paper off the sides and just discard them. And then you can actually flip the cake once this is fully cooled down. You can flip the cake over. Be obviously careful if you're taking this straight out of the oven and it's still warm. I've left time for a while in the tin just to cool down, so it makes this easier, this processing a lot easier. And then you just want to peel the paper back from the bottom, and then what you want to do is just leave that line to cool down on a cooling wire. I would say probably for at least an hour minimum. If you've got longer to leave it cool, then I would just pop a dish towel over it just to keep it kind of protected from anything that's floating around. So I would leave that to cool down. Now, to check it as well, if you've got a skewer, before you take it out of the oven, you want to take a skewer and just pull it out and check that it's dry. If it's still wet, you maybe want to pop it back in the oven for another 10 or 15 minutes. But as I said, after 2 hours, it should be absolutely fine. I followed this recipe absolutely to the T and it came out absolutely perfect. Now, to store your cake, all I've done for this is I've just popped it into a celebration tin. And then what I've done with it is first of all, I covered it in a layer of greaseproof paper, and then I covered it in a layer of tinfoil. So greaseproof paper first, fully wrap it up in tinfoil, pop the tinfoil, pop the cake inside a Heroes tin or a Celebration tin, or if you've got any other tins floating around the house that are big enough to hold the cake, pop the lid on, and what you want to do is keep that somewhere nice and cool and dark right up until Christmas. And I said every maybe like 2 weeks, put the holes in it, drizzle it with the alcohol or apple juice or orange juice, and that'll keep it moist up to Christmas. Now, as I said, I'll post some links on how you can decorate the Christmas cakes. You don't need to decorate them, obviously. If you just want to do it and enjoy the cake on Christmas Day, that's absolutely fine, but decorating is obviously a fun way to kind of stay positive up to Christmas as well. I hope you enjoyed my demonstration. If you've got any questions, feel free to send me a message on Teams or on Show My Homework, and I will get back to you if I can. Thanks!